The Bryce Podcast.
Welcome to the Pit Press Podcast. I'm 1/3 of it. My name is Ryan Tamori. I'm going to do this quick. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, and I guess, what did I say last episode? Interviewer guy, so much for my college education, Mr. Ed Nunez, who is the voice of Western New Mexico and a Lobo fan since 1970. How are you, sir?
Doing good, Ryan. Another great guest. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're really happy to have this guy on. You know, I'm going to do this right now.
Alford with 5. Alford with 3. Step back 3.
Our next guest is a former La Cueva Bear standout. He played his college basketball at the University of California, Los Angeles. For you non-nerds out there, that is UCLA. From 2014 through 2017, he averaged 13 points per game, just under 4 assists, and about 3 rebounds per game. He set UCLA's career record for most three-pointers made. That's 329. At UCLA, he had a school record 116 three-pointers as a senior after having made 93 triples as a sophomore in 2014 and 2015. He helped lead UCLA to a 6-3 mark in 3 trips to the NCAA tournament. That includes 3 Sweet 16 appearances, 2014, 2015, and 2017. If you couldn't tell by the name, he's the son of former UNM men's head basketball coach Steve Alford. More importantly, though, he is hosting the second Bryce Alford basketball camp from Monday, July 17th through Thursday, July 20th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at La Cueva High School. Registrations are still being accepted, and you can nab more information at brycealfordbasketballcamp.com. Our next guest is Bryce Alford. Bryce, thank you for joining us, and how are you today, man?
I'm doing well. That was a heck of an intro. I appreciate it. But yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
No, I got to build up my guests. It's what I do. First and foremost, tell us about your camp.
Yeah, I'm really excited. This is something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. I got to do it for the first time. I want to say 4 years ago. And it's something I want to do every summer, but then obviously COVID happened and it kind of shut down summer camps for kids for a while. So we're getting it back going this year. This will be our second year doing it. But yeah, just really excited. I love any excuse I have to get back to Albuquerque and obviously give it back to that community I grew up in. I went to middle school and high school in Albuquerque, spent 6 years there. So I still call that place home a lot of times. And so I'm really excited to get camp going next week.
The camp is open to both boys and girls in the 3rd through 9th grades. You normally don't hear that when it comes to sports camps with how everything competitive sports-wise is these days, especially with youth now. Why that decision?
Well, we did boys only my first year, and we got a ton of parents reaching out if we were doing a girls camp. And so I've always kind of followed my dad's camp model. I grew up going to his camp in Indiana. He's had his camp now for over 35 years there. And they started doing boys and girls together probably 15 years ago. So it's just something that I've seen work. And like I said, I got a lot of parents asking if I was doing a girls camp. And so I didn't want to leave people out. So at the ages that we're doing, especially the younger ages, the boys and girls being together, it is what it is. A lot of times you see some girls in there that can beat up on the guys. So I just wanted to be all inclusive and try to, make sure that anybody that wanted to come to camp was allowed to.
Well, you told Jeff Grammer in the Journal article. Now you told us that, quote, you really enjoy, or excuse me, really have any excuse to come back to Albuquerque. and that you use that camp because I don't get to come back here to Albuquerque as much as you'd like. You kind of touched on it, but what makes Albuquerque so special to you?
Well, I just, I'm 28 years old now. And like I said, I was there from middle school and high school. So that's a big chunk of my childhood. I've got a lot of my childhood friends still live in Albuquerque. So some of those guys will be helping me out with camp. And I married my wife. She's from Albuquerque. She's a La Cueva girl as well. So I just have a lot of ties there. And then obviously my time there, I just really enjoyed. I loved going to my dad's games in the pit. I loved being a Lobo fan, and then I loved playing in that town. I can remember my senior year, majority of my high school games were sold out, and that was just something that I just had a lot of support, and I still to this day get a lot of support from people in New Mexico. So it's nothing but love for me for Albuquerque and the state of New Mexico. So I just enjoy coming back.
Obviously, you played at UCLA. It's a different market. Southern California is a different culture. But how does the love of basketball compare to that here in Albuquerque and in the state of New Mexico with UCLA and its legacy?
Well, obviously UCLA is its own beast, just in terms of John Wooden and everything else with the tradition there. But nothing compares to the pit. Nothing I've ever played in. I played 4 years at UCLA. I played at Rupp Arena. I've played at the McHale Center 3 times. Nothing compares to the pit when it's in its heyday. And so the passion is there in Albuquerque and in New Mexico in general. That's what I've always loved, and that's why another reason I do camp is because people love the game. People love the game in New Mexico, and LA is just a different beast because you've got so many different sports and so many pro avenues going on, and there's so much going on in LA that even if we sold out a game at UCLA, usually it took until the second media timeout for that thing to be full. So whereas in like a place like the pit, it's full before tip off. So it's a different, like you said, different avenue, different market, but the passion is incredible in New Mexico for basketball.
You kind of elaborated on that, and that's how I kind of wrote this question. So forgive me. I said UCLA is UCLA. No need to paint the picture of the basketball history there. But you had an outstanding career there. You're the school's number 5 all-time leading scorer with 1,922 career points. You became UCLA's only player to record over 1,700 career points and 500 assists. With the legacy of that program, do you ever think that there's something you would or could accomplish going there?
No, I'll be honest, I was committed to come to New Mexico. I just knew I wanted to play for my dad. I grew up going to all my dad's practices, riding on the bus with his teams. I knew all of his offensive sets from the time I was probably 12 years old. So I knew that that's what I wanted to be a part of, because I loved how my dad ran his programs. And so once I started to become a better player in high school, I kind of told my dad pretty early on, if you think I'm good enough, I want to come play for you. And then, it just a crazy thing happened in the summer of that year where he got a call from UCLA. And I tell people all the time, my family, my dad, myself, we loved it in New Mexico. And there's maybe a handful of teams, if not less, that could have called my dad and kind of and got him to leave. And UCLA was one of them. And so, yeah, when that happened, we just, we took it head on. And one of the first questions I asked my dad is, am I good enough to play in the Pac-12? Am I good enough to play at UCLA? And he reassured me right away that I was. And so, yeah, I tried to attack it head on. And I was lucky enough to have some really, really good teammates in my 4 years there. So the 500 assist part definitely is because of that. But yeah, I wouldn't have imagined I had the career that I had, but I also was confident that I was a good enough player to play there and have a good career.
You mentioned, Bryce, the power of the pit. You mentioned that. You also mentioned the tradition at UCLA and Wooden, Walt Hazard, Gail Goodrich, Al Cindor, Walton, Marcus Johnson, Reggie Miller. There's so many great names. And, your name's right amongst it's one of the leading scorers of all time. That's got to be very special for you, considering the tradition they have there at UCLA. But, you mentioned that the UCLA was one of the few schools that could have called, your dad to leave. And this brings us to our next question. Your dad had just signed an extension at UNM, and then UCLA came calling. Had your father stayed at UNM, there's probably a pretty good chance you would have been a Lobo. Do you ever think about that?
Yeah, I think about it all the time. It's easy to play kind of the what if game, of thinking, if different life decisions can impact you in different ways. And I wouldn't trade what happened for anything, because I think everything happens for a reason. And at the end of the day, I got to play at one of the best programs in the nation for basketball, and I think it helped me in my pro career, and it kind of helped open some doors for me that way. But of course, thinking about being kind of the hometown kid and playing where I grew up, and playing in the Mountain West, and seeing the career that I had at a Power 5 school, to be able to kind of imagine what I could have done at New Mexico and that sort of thing. It's definitely something I've thought about, and it would have been interesting. It would have been an interesting 4 years of me at New Mexico. So yeah, I'd be lying if I didn't say I've definitely thought about it in the past.
We mentioned this to Roman Martinez. I mentioned this to J.R. Giddings in a previous interview. Your dad, gold medal winner, won a national championship, played for Bob Knight, played for your grandfather. And there's so many things. It might not be just one thing. Your brother Corey was an assistant with him. When you played at La Cueva, your dad's always in the stands. I remember. What was the biggest thing you took from having your dad as your coach at UCLA?
For one, the memories, of just, we have lifelong memories now of those 4 years together. And that's what I tell people too, is if I would have gone and played somewhere else, and not had him as my coach, because he is a coach, he would have never been able to see me play in college. He wouldn't have been able to go to one game because, schedules are too difficult that way. So he got to see every single one of my games up close and personal. So that's something that we'll be able to remember for our life. And nothing can replace that. But the biggest thing I take away from him and being around him is just the work ethic that it takes to get to a level like that, and to have the success that he's had at every stop he's been, with arguably New Mexico being his most successful. So just the work ethic and the dedication and kind of the obsession you have to have of just getting better at whatever it is that you do every day.
Probably being coached by your grandfather and Bob Knight. I read A Season on the Brink, man. I read that book, and there was a lot of great parts of that. There really was. Bryce, you played with two of the top 20 players taken in the 2017 draft. Lonzo Ball, number 2 overall, and Lonzo Ball's hit some bad times with that knee. It's unfortunate, with the knee problems he's having. And TJ Leap, number 18 overall. Can you describe what it was like watching and playing with them during the 16-17 season?
Well, that was a special team. I think that was arguably one of the best offensive teams there's been in college basketball in a long, long time. Statistically, we led the nation, or we're top 5 in the nation in just about every category. And it was just a fun team to be a part of, because any given night, one of our players could have had 30 points. We'd had a ton of games that we had as a team, 20 to 30 assists as a team. And we played so up and down, so fast, and shot a ton of threes. And we were allowed to do that because of guys like the two that you mentioned, because Lonzo was so good at getting a rebound and pushing the break. And a lot of people asked me, especially when I was in my pre-draft stuff, coming out of college, because he was in that draft as well. A lot of NBA executives were asking me what makes Lonzo who he is, or why should we take him in the top 5? What makes him better than so-and-so? And what I told him is, I've never played with a guy that hits you in your shooting pocket on every single pass. And it was incredible that, my 3-point percentage from my junior year to my senior year went up by, I think, 6 or 7%. And a lot of that is a testament to him, just because, one, when I was open, he would always find me, but 2, he would hit me right in my shooting pocket. And as a shooter, that makes things really easy. But yeah, like I said, I played with a ton of really, really good talent. I played with those two, Kyle Anderson, my freshman year, Zach Levine, who I'm still very close with. I played with my freshman year. So yeah, Norman Powell, I can go down the list. There's a ton of guys, but a lot of really good, talented teammates I had in 4 years.
I don't know if I can ask a better question to answer that. Great. Or to back up that answer you just gave, because it was amazing. And before I ask this question, you're talking to somebody who went to Mass in Central New Jersey with my grandmother, in Polish. So I'm going to get, my last name isn't Italian. It's Hungarian. I'm half Polak, half Hungarian, and I'm going to attempt this the best I can, man. So bear with me. You play professionally in Poland now, playing for Zielona Góra, and I even recorded it.
Zielona Góra.
Zielona Góra. What is it like playing in the Polish professional league?
Yeah, I've kind of bounced around. I've played 3 years in the NBA G League, and then I just finished my 3rd year overseas. So I've just kind of been bouncing around, trying to make it wherever I can, and trying to just progress my playing career. So I played in Germany my 1st year overseas, then I went to Portugal, and then this past season I was in Poland. So it's a weird deal overseas. You kind of sign 1-year contracts for the most part, and you could be in one country and then the next country and then the next. And so you kind of just try to figure out what your niche is over there and where you fit in. And so the Polish league was good, very competitive league, very physical league. A lot of times I felt like I was playing rugby out there. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun to travel to these different countries and kind of see how the game is different in each country, because it is. But yeah, I had a very good year this year in Poland, and still waiting to figure out where we're going next.
You mentioned that you played in the NBA G League. You played for the Oklahoma City Blue and the Windy City Bulls. You obviously have a 14-month-old baby. Congratulations. You have a child over the year with your wife. And they lived with you in the past year while you played in Poland. But is there still, obviously, and you're in your prime at 28 years old, but is there still a chance in your mind you're like, man, I would love a crack at making an NBA roster?
Yeah, I mean, that's always my dream wasn't to play overseas. My childhood dream was to play in the NBA. And so I'm realistic. I'm not somebody who's kind of far-fetched in the way that I think. But, I've always thought that in the right situation with the right team that I could make a roster and be a guy who can make an impact. But what I've learned over the years is kind of to control what I can control. And my first 2 years in the G League with the Blue, I had phenomenal years. I led the G League in threes made my first year, and I didn't get any call-ups. So it kind of got to the point where it was kind of like, what more can I do to kind of earn that possibility of getting a call-up? And so at some point it becomes, okay, we got to go overseas and just make as much money as you can in your playing career, because our playing careers in basketball aren't that long. So I'm going to keep grinding it out overseas as long as the financial side is worth it. And, if the NBA ever comes calling, I'm not going to say no. So
I as I reread that question, that was a dumb question. Of course you want to play in the NBA. You also said that you're not sure where you're going to play basketball next year. You mentioned the 1-year contracts. Let's say you're not in the NBA, and I ask this just maybe with beautiful places around the country. Is there a specific place maybe that you would want to play internationally?
I mean, really any of the top leagues in Europe, which if you run down the line, Germany is great, France is great, Spain, Italy, Turkey, Israel. There's a lot of really good leagues. But yeah, I mean, obviously an easy sell to my wife is Italy. So that would be great. It's a great basketball league, a great place to live. We've visited there while we've been in Europe, so we love it as a family. So I've got some connections there. So if somebody in Italy calls, that's the right situation, then I think we'd probably jump on that.
I mentioned Bryce, I had a chance to talk to Coach Castillo today, and as a senior at La Cueva, you became the state of New Mexico's all-time leading scorer, surpassing Nick Pino, who was just inducted into the New Mexico Sports Hall of Fame a couple of years ago. Nick the Stick, what did that mean to you?
Well, Nick did a great thing for me and gave me a ball that had his scoring record and then my scoring record. He made a basketball for me, and then I don't remember when it was. It feels like forever ago now, but he handed that to me, and I still have that at my parents' house. But obviously, anytime you break a record that I think was 50 years old at the time, it was a very cool thing to accomplish. And yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see how long that record lasts.
It lasted a long time. As a senior at La Cueva, I was broadcasting the championship game that you played against El Dorado. It was a shootout with Henry Tafoya. I broadcast that game with him. It was a great game. El Dorado, of course, had your AAU teammate, Cullen Neal. shootout, like I mentioned, very close game. What are your recollections of that contest?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that was me and Cullen's junior year, and it was kind of a season long series between us that being in the same district as them, we beat them twice at their place, and then they beat us twice at our place, and that was kind of like game 5 at the pit. So it was like this major buildup going into that game. Kind of both teams, we felt like that was who we were going to run into in the championship. And then once we got put on the opposite sides of the bracket, that was the game. You know, we knew that that's what it was going to be. And then we showed up for that game, and the student sections behind each basket went all the way to the top. It was sold out. It looked like a New Mexico Lobos game in there. And so probably to this day, one of my favorite games, even though we lost, one of my favorite games to play in, just because of the support that we had, and obviously the magnitude of what it meant to be the state champion, and it being kind of the deciding game between the two teams in the series for that year.
Great game.
I was there. Yeah, it was a madhouse. I remember that.
Yeah.
He is hosting his second basketball camp, the Bryce Alford basketball camp, from Monday, July 17th through Thursday, July 20th. Again, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at La Cueva High School. Registrations are still being accepted, and you can have more information at brycealfordbasketball.camp.com. Bryce, is that all the information out there? I hope I got that all right.
You got it right. You killed it.
All right, perfect. Hey, man, we really appreciate your time. Thank you for joining the Pit Press podcast.
Of course. Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks, Bryce.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, we really appreciate